The Actor CEO Podcast, episode 53.
It's like, I think for me, a lot of the process was to be able to kind of be in tune with the technique of things first. I think, the nature of the work is still the same, but because the process is so different, you can't help but approach it. You have to approach it differently.
Going up. You're an actor, but you're also a business. Take control of your career by learning how to manage it like a boss. Be driven, be responsible, be in control. Be an actor CEO. And now, your host, Mike Moreno.
Hello, and welcome once again to the Actor CEO Podcast. Thank you for joining me on this journey of learning, exploration, and dedication. If you want to keep getting tips and tricks from industry pros, established actors, and hardworking artists, make sure you subscribe to this podcast. That way, when you're on the go to your next audition, commuting home from work, or at the gym, you can take a moment to listen and get some serious insight into building a better career by becoming an actor CEO. Hey actors, what if I told you you could take acting class with Kevin Spacey or Dustin Hoffman? You'd freak out, right? And then you'd ask, okay, how much? Masterclass is an online learning service that gives you access to acting classes with these master actors for just $90. You can't even rent rehearsal space in New York City for that much, and you get hours of exclusive footage you won't find anywhere else, worksheets and templates, and a community forum to connect you with other passionate performers. This is access you can't find elsewhere, and the knowledge that these two titans of film and stage deliver in these courses is priceless. Click the link on the homepage at actorceo.com or find it on the resources page at actorceo.com/resources. Masterclass provides phenomenal content, so don't miss your chance to learn from the greats. Now back to the show. I am so excited to bring on my guest today. He's a friend of mine from here in New York City. I've worked closely with him actually through the Shakespeare Forum, which is how I first met him. And I'm super excited to bring Filipe Valle Costa on the show today. You know him from FX's new series, SNOWFALL. And Filipe plays Pedro Nava. And this whole beautiful, amazing series all about my hometown in Los Angeles and some of the darker sides of growing up in Los Angeles. But you've also seen Filipe on Blue Bloods and Gotham, and then, of course, on Unicorn Land. And he's been here doing shows in New York City, Henry V with the Shakespeare Forum, and working with Rising Circle Theater Collective. And also, he runs a theater company himself, the Saudade Theater, which he started in 2015 to bring Portuguese theater here to New York City, which I think is really incredible, and we'll hear more about that when we bring him on the show. Filipe, thank you so much for joining us today. It is such a pleasure to be talking to you.
Thank you for having me, Mike. It's my pleasure.
Yeah, man, I am so stoked. First, let's get the biggest thing out of the way. Congratulations on this wonderful new chapter in your acting life, working with FX on SNOWFALL, man.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah,
it feels very special. Yeah.
Yeah, it's super cool. It's a great network. They're putting out a lot of incredible stuff. I mean, everybody talks about we're in the golden age of television nowadays, and FX has been leading that charge, I think, for a while. So it's really cool to be working with such solid, creative people.
Absolutely. Right before I got cast, my girlfriend and I had just finished watching An American Crime Story, O.J. Simpson, and we were just so blown away by the sort of energy that show had, how truthful it felt, and my girlfriend kept saying, "This is my favorite show now. This is my favorite show." And
wow. And
then to get cast, that was within like 2 weeks of us finishing that show.
Wow.
You can't help but feel cool in a moment like that, when you get to say, I'm on an FX show, it's something that definitely carries some sort of cool, young and hip energy, Yeah. And you definitely feel that while working with them. You feel that sort of energy.
That's awesome.
Just feels very raw, and sort of people are willing to take risks, and that's sort of what they call themselves, fearless, right? FX. Yes. Fearless, and right. They definitely live up to it, so it's a pleasure to be a part of it. Yeah,
that's incredible. So let's dive into that transition, if you will, going from that audition stage when you had the opportunity to audition for them and you're going through the process, and how did you work on preparing for that type of role, and then how did you work on, I guess, keeping that, the authenticity that you were bringing to it, or just, surviving that process, which I'm sure is a little bit hectic when you go through the many callbacks and then finally waiting around to figure out whether you're going to do it or not. How did you prepare for it, and how did you survive it?
Well, Mike, that's actually, My story is pretty different than what you just described, actually.
Okay.
Not that it was less stressful, but I'll tell you what happened. So this was, we got the notice for the tape for Snowfall, right? And we had heard about it because they had already done it. They shot the pilots. John Singleton directed it, and FX decided not to go with it, but to reshoot and recast the whole show. And we got that notice, and I remember this moment so well because I was in my manager's office, and I just had one of those moments like, it's time to go away from New York City for a second, you know? It's like, I call them the New York moments where all of a sudden the city becomes very overwhelming and you sort of you just want to go away for a second so you can appreciate it again and feel that, you know, find a way to go through the city with a positive energy. So I was having one of those moments. So I decided to book a flight to go to Atlanta to see some of my best friends. They work out of there right now and they're doing really, really well in Atlanta. So I decided to go visit them. So I bought the flight, and I knew that because of that, that meant that I only had one day to prepare for the audition. They had given me 3 days, but because I just wanted to be done by the time I arrived in Atlanta, I decided to just go tape it the day after and send it right away. This was about, I would say, 15 pages to prepare overnight, which, that becomes a whole new skill of itself. And I brought, I did my best to memorize the lines before I go to sleep. And then I invited my co-artistic director, actually, for Saudade Theater, Diogo Martins, to just come spend the day with me at home and let's go at it for a whole day.
Yeah.
And so we did, and it wasn't perfect. And I was just, it was the middle of the summer. I was sweating and like kicking walls and frustrated that I couldn't get through one of the scenes without, stuttering or messing up a line or, because I definitely didn't have the lines as well prepared as I wish I had, Right. But at that point, I wasn't thinking too much. So I did it. We finished the day. I took him out for dinner. I promised him dinner if he had helped me with the tape. And we sent it. And then I left to go to Atlanta. So then I'm in Atlanta, and 2 days later, I get a phone. We had driven to Gainesville, Florida, which is where I went to grad school. And I was in Gainesville. And I got a phone call from my manager saying that I was on hold for Snowfall and to hold the whole month of August because that's when they were shooting the pilot.
Right.
And I might have to go to LA to screen test for it. And I just thought, I couldn't believe it because when you send a tape from New York City to LA, you kind of just, okay, this is definitely going to get lost in the world, just have this feeling of helplessness of like, okay, it's really hard to actually believe that someone is going to watch it and take it seriously.
You feel so disconnected from it.
Exactly. But they did. And so I was very happy in Gainesville for the rest of the time with my friends. And then a month went by and I did not hear at all.
Wow.
Yeah, nothing. My manager had checked in with them and they didn't say anything. So we just, after a month, you kind of do part of your job as an actor is to be able to learn how to move on from things. So it took me about, maybe 2 weeks and I was done thinking about it,
Right.
So then a month went by and we got an email from them saying, hey, we just wanted to let you know that Filipe is still on hold for this. And we were like, that's so strange. A month had gone by. That's just so strange, but great news. Another week goes by and we don't hear anything. So I let go of it again. That week goes by and they send us another email saying, hey, can Filipe actually put himself on tape for another character? And I was sort of bummed because the first character that I had auditioned for was a series regular part. And this one that they now wanted me to tape for was listed as a guest star.
Uh-huh.
So I was sort of bummed, just sad, but also kind of glad that they're continuing to take my work seriously and that they want to try me out for this other part. So
right. More, they like you enough and they want to keep you in the room, so to speak. And, they like what you're doing, but it's not quite what it was before.
Exactly. And I'll get there at the end of the story. You'll see how it all
kind of... Oh my God, what a wild ride this is. I'm so glad I'm talking to you about this.
I know. So it's actually not the traditional story, and you'll see why. Yeah. They asked me to put myself on tape for Pedro. And it, this time was less to prepare. It was 2 scenes, but about 5 to 6 pages. So it's completely doable. And I remember Portugal was playing the Euro Cup at the time. So I think this was like quarterfinals. And I was at this Portuguese restaurant. We were throwing an event through the theater company. And I'm kind of drunk, and happy that Portugal had won the quarterfinals. And I got done watching the game and I went to Bryant Park and kind of drunk, memorized the lines like so well. I was so happy to come out of the Portugal game with a victory. I walked to the restaurant was right by Bryant Park. So I walked to Bryant Park. It's a beautiful day outside. I'm just walking around Bryant Park, memorizing my lines and kind of drunk and really happy. And yeah, I think without knowing, I was infusing all of these auditions with a lot of positivity because my surroundings were very positive, you know? So my co-artistic director, again, Diogo, one of my best friends, comes over the day after. We do both scenes. The first one take. The second one, 2 takes. And that was it. And we kind of looked at it and we're like, that's it.
That's it. That's good.
Yeah, that's
Nailed it.
All right. So we sent it. Right? We sent it. I didn't think about it because, again, we were preparing these events for the theater company because Portugal was playing the Euro Cup. And 2 days later, they sent an email saying that Filipe is now on hold for both characters.
Wow.
Oh, my God. Right? So, okay, here we go. 2 days go by again. We just wanted to let you know that Filipe is now on hold only for Pedro. Okay, so I was happy but kind of bummed again because this was not the series' regular role, right?
Right.
Another week goes by and we don't hear. Because
I can't believe this story gets even more wild.
I know. So, another week goes by and nothing. We don't hear anything again.
Yeah.
And I couldn't believe it by now. I was like, this has been too crazy.
Right.
Meanwhile, one of my best friends from Portugal, childhood friend, is getting married. And I don't know if I can go see him at his wedding. And it was driving me crazy that, these people have been just leading me on for 2 months. At the time, I'm thinking these people,
right.
I don't mean these people in a negative way. It's just, they have been just, my life has depended on this for a while. And my best friend is getting married and I don't know if I can go see him. So I remember having one of those New York moments in the middle of the streets of New York. I had gone to pick up my girlfriend from work and we decided to walk home even though it was very far. And we started walking. And I remember I just started crying. I was like, I don't know if I can go see my friend. And, and my girlfriend is holding me. And it's like, and it's just one of those moments where you just feel so helpless as an actor.
Well, you feel like you aren't in control of your own life.
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
Man.
And you keep putting so much faith into this one thing. And meanwhile, this thing is taking over everything. And, at that point, it hadn't given me enough back for me to feel like it was warranted, that I wouldn't be able to go see my friend get married because of the possibility of a job. You know what I mean? I felt very helpless, but so my girlfriend and I ended up arguing, because we're both feeling emotional. She walks away from me and I'm alone in the middle of the streets of New York. It's such a New York moment.
Oh my God.
I slow down. I call her. I say, babe, I'm so sorry. I'm feeling anxious. Let's just go get some ice cream and cook a nice steak and, treat ourselves tonight. And she's like, yeah, absolutely. So we are at the grocery shop and I get the phone call from my manager saying that I got it, that this is not a prank call and that you have the job. You don't have to go to LA to screen test. They want you. You're the thing. You're going to LA to shoot Snowfall this month. And I'm losing my, you know what I mean? At this point, I didn't even react, Mike, by that point.
You had no energy left.
I didn't. And I stopped and I told her, I said, Chichi, my manager, who has become one of the dearest friends in my life, I said, please do not, this has to be true. This, you know what I mean? I stopped her and I said, please, are you sure? Are you sure? And she's like, I'm sure. And the first thing I asked is, can I go to Portugal tomorrow and go see my friend? And she says, oh, I don't know when they'll need you. So I go to sleep. We have all the ice cream and the steak in the world. And we go to sleep. And I wake up and I had a voicemail from my manager saying, I talked to FX. You don't start shooting in another week so you can go to Portugal and see your friend get married. I buy the tickets. I call my mom. We buy the ticket to Portugal. I arrive. I had to shower in the airport of Paris on the sink. I arrive in Portugal at 2:30 p.m. and the wedding is at 4.
Wow.
Pick me up and I arrived there right on time. And at this point, my friend didn't know that I was going to be there. So it was just one of those moments that he wasn't expecting me. And I was able to be there for him, it was definitely one hell of a roller coaster,
Hey, actor CEOs, Mike Moreno here. I hope you're enjoying this episode of the podcast. I just want to take a second to remind you to sign up for our newsletter at actorceo.com/newsletter. When you do, you'll get exclusive content delivered to your inbox on Monday alongside the episode release. It's a great way to add tools to your arsenal like an audition scene database, video tutorials with guests, deals on business cards and headshots, and many more that are only offered in the newsletter. Take your career to the next level and sign up at actorceo.com/newsletter. Now back to the show. Absolutely. Man,
but once you arrive,
that's such a beautiful a lot of serendipity happening, in the end there. And I got to say, it's such a testament to, and this is something we try to talk about on the podcast a lot, is a testament to, your understanding of, yourself enough that you and your girlfriend, you had these moments, but you knew why this was happening. And yes, it's uncomfortable, but, you also took, I want to point out some of these small things that you mentioned. You took some of these moments to like celebrate what you do have and be grateful for the things that you guys have. You were like, let's get some steak and ice cream and just like enjoy that we have, this time together. And, and you're trying to be cognizant of that. And so, I think that that's always important for actors to try and do for themselves, because it is such a, as this story exemplifies, oh my God, in such an incredible way, it is such a balance that you have to craft, because the industry is trying to do one thing and you can't devote so much. You need to devote so much of yourself into it, but you can't let it control your life, but at the same time, it kind of does. So you got to find a way to balance it.
Exactly. And you have to find your place under the sun outside of this career. As much as, steps like these are special in my life, and they mean a lot to me because, I left Portugal when I was 17 telling people that I was going to go to Hollywood.
Right.
You know what I mean? I left my country, my people, my language, like everything I've ever known to achieve something like this. But then, your life starts to happen here, and my dream kind of becomes your reality. It has become one of the main driving forces in my life. But because of that, I have allowed it to get to me too much, and I think now that it's about those moments, you know what I mean? It's about being able to tell Vanessa, let's go have some ice cream and be happy in the ways that we know that we can be happy, and that this is just as important, if not more, than us achieving everything that we've ever wanted, that success and happiness, and don't let this career dictate what makes you happy in life beyond what you do. Even if what you do is the thing that makes you the most happy, you have to sort of allow yourself to find other things in life that make you happy, and, having this relationship for me and having a moment like that with her where I can get to be completely raw in front of my life partner, that's happiness. You know what I mean? Right. That beyond all the difficulties of this career, you can find some ease in your life, and that hopefully you build it, enough of a, I don't want to say wall, but sort of like a resilience about you that allows you to get through the day and focus on what really is important. And that's just, your friends, your family, your people, your loved one.
Yeah, absolutely. The whole of your being is not wrapped up in this industry, because the flip side of this coin is that you need to have those outside sources of living your life to the fullest in order to actually be the full actor you want to be, and that you're always striving to be, in front of the camera or on stage anyway.
Exactly.
You have to become a whole person in order to portray a whole person.
Yeah. And, I think the business consumes us so much that we forget that there's got to be a balance within the business part of things, because it's our job to put everything that we have and that we are into any piece of work that we, that is brought upon us. You know what I mean? It's very hard to separate how to not be completely, fully invested, or not, I don't want to say invested, but you know what I mean? Having everything depend on that career, but then, having the ability to remain open enough to explore our work, which is such a sensitive little thing, when people tell me, oh, all these actors are so sensitive, I really take it personally, because this is sort of what is asked of us. To be sensitive is our job. Right. You know what I mean? To be empathetic, to be open, to be sensitive. These are the qualities that are often demanded of us as actors.
And if it was easy to turn on and off, then everybody would do it.
Exactly.
But then you wouldn't have anybody being a dentist.
Exactly. It's such a vicious business in a way. Vicious is such a strong word. A tough business that how do you stay sensitive? You know what I mean? That's the balance. That's the true balance. When to open and when to close, and when to find, just realizing that you can't really get too happy or too sad. You just have to be happy no matter what, or at ease with your own self. Absolutely. Despite the results,
Absolutely. And so that actually leads me, Filipe, to talking about something which, I would love to hear your insight on, having now transitioned to this point where, you lucky enough were able to go to set back and forth, on a daily basis, certainly on a weekly basis, for an extended period of time in a character, in an environment, in a role, in a story. And there are changes, and there's lots of things going on, especially considering this is a new series. So they're trying to make stuff up on the fly sometimes.
Exactly.
So what do you do for yourself to have those moments where you can get yourself into character and make sure that you're continuing the story that you've built upon, but also coming out of that, are you taking some time to leave that on set and try to be, your own personal self at home? Or are you taking some days where you're giving yourself your own, personal time in order to separate yourself from the business? How did you find a balance in doing those things?
Oh my God, that is the question. That is the question.
Did you find something where you could maybe offer some tips to other people who are, maybe about to take that dive?
My first opportunity as a series regular, and that means you're there. I shot 9 out of the 10 episodes. So the process of shooting a TV show is completely different than doing a play. First of all, because, like you said, it's a new show. So there's that pressure, right? Everyone is sort of, you can tell that everyone is paying attention because they want to make sure that this is the new great thing coming out, right? Everyone is very attentive, right? And you pick up on that energy. But also beyond that, how, a set can be a very overwhelming place. And this is a show where things are very, it's about the 80s and it's about Los Angeles, and we're wearing these amazing costumes and there are cool cars everywhere and there are guns, there's cocaine, there's 25,000 people on the crew and right. Sound people. And, how does a theater artist, which is, what I've been for the greater part of my career, how do you adjust the way you have learned to approach the work, to this new completely, it's a completely new world. I didn't even know how to hit a mark in the middle of my scenes. This is like, I'm learning almost all of it on the go. It's like, I think for me, a lot of the process was to be able to kind of be in tune with the technique of things first. I think the nature of the work is still the same, but because the process is so different, you can't help but approach it. You have to approach it differently. Mm-hmm. So I did find times that there were certain scenes where I felt, in the very beginning, that because I was dropping character every time the take would be done, to either connect with one of my fellow actors or to just get distracted by something else, or mm-hmm. I felt like something was missing in the work. This is not to say that I started walking around the same way that Daniel Day-Lewis does, right. Where he's completely the character. But there is something to be said about, because your takes are not going to be that long, even if you're shooting a scene that is long, you're shooting, from different angles. So then you have to shoot the beginning of the scene here, the middle of the scene there, so you're shooting everything in fragments. So the nature of the work is so fragmented, it's not continuous. Like, you're doing a play from the very beginning to the end. That's a journey, and there's nothing stopping you. Even if you have to get off stage as an actor, you find a way to find the journey in between those moments. But there, right. You know what I mean? It's
that quote off stage time when you're shooting is exactly. So frequent
and it's so sensitive.
Sometimes jarring.
Yeah, jarring, exactly. And so sensitive that if you, and presence is something that is demanded out of you, shooting a TV show, because things have to move quickly. For most of my most important scenes, I got 2 takes. That was it.
Wow.
You get 2 takes and they're either it or they're not. So, it took me a while to adjust, but once I did, there's something very beautiful that comes out of that intimacy of having, these little moments that are very, you can afford a certain amount of intimacy that maybe on stage, sometimes it gets lost. And I learned to love that about, being on TV or a lot of this TV show was filmed as if it was a film. So, whatever that is, there's something very beautiful about that, the ability to just whisper a line or to just, do something with your face that is very small, but very telling of what the character is going through. Those are things that you cannot really afford on stage. And it's a type of intimacy that really attracts me, Some of my very favorite moments on stage have been moments where you are able to sort of, keep it small, be subtle, but at the same time project it in a way that it becomes bigger than life. It's, right. I don't know how to describe those moments, but they're, I think what we all live for as actors.
Yeah. So were there any, throughout your process, getting used to how this environment worked, were there any little reminders tips for yourself that, you tried to keep in mind when you're coming on set and you're like, I know I'm doing this scene I've been shooting for the past couple months. Now I'm a little bit more familiar with how this works. This is what I do to either stay in character, or this is what I do in order to get right back to where I was to shoot this next close-up.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things that definitely works, and listen, this is, my experience,
Sure.
maybe they can help some other people, but my experience is that this is why you're asking me. I don't know why I said that, you were asking me yeah, I will give you my advice. Here's, I saw that Meryl Streep talks about that people talk about working with Meryl Streep, that, if she's shooting a very happy scene, she'll come very happy on set. She'll show up very happy. If she's shooting something that is perhaps sad or, quiet, she comes on set in that way. And I started to understand why it helps the work, because there is so much distraction. It helps the work stay focused. So I would say, remind yourself that the energy on set is a very sensitive thing. And you have to create your own sort of energy to allow you to be present when that is demanded out of you right away,
and protect that, whatever that is, for yourself. So
exactly.
that if someone tries to talk to you or something like that, obviously be professional and respectful, just like an audition room.
Exactly.
Be professional, but be like, you know what? If I could just have 5 minutes right now to focus on what I'm doing, that'd be great.
Yeah, there are sensitive ways of doing that without hurting people's feelings, for sure. You really have to take ownership of your work. Because everyone there, there's so many people, but everyone is doing their job so well,
right?
So you have to be fully prepared and come on set knowing that, you have some sort of, I don't want to call it choice, because then that means that it's set, that's what
you have ownership.
Ownership is the word. Exactly. Not that you're pre-playing everything, but you have to have some sort of preparation that allows you to walk in feeling like, I own this shit.
Yeah, confidence. And ownership. And that still means that a director can come up to you and be like, I think there's this other part of this scene that we're not quite getting, so let's try it this way. And that's in a way that you haven't ever thought of it. And you're like, maybe that's not the way I would do it. But you're confident in your preparation. You're confident that you've been standing around being in character long enough that you're like, all right, let's see what this guy does if this is the way we go about it.
Exactly.
And that's ownership. That's something that you have control of. It's filtering through you. You're not doing someone else's idea.
Yeah.
This is exactly why we brought you on the show. It's to have this conversation. Because it's crucial.
Did those help? You think those? Okay.
Absolutely. I mean, it's so crucial, man. And I think it's so important because there are so many people out there. Of course, you get a lot more experience often doing work for theater or anything like that. Certainly people who are transitioning, but to understand what it means to take what you have had ownership over on stage and then to transition that into what you could have ownership over in front of the camera in a new environment. Learn the technical things, but know that there are some similarities, and this is how you translate it into that world.
I have one more, which I think is very important. There are moments where I catch myself sometimes complaining as an actor when I'm sent an audition that is 17 pages long and I have to go in the day after completely off book and prepared and ready to go. Sometimes I find myself complaining about those, but I'll tell you this, that is why you are paid very well to be a series regular on a show, because that's a great part of the job. I had scenes sent to me the night before.
Yep.
I was completely memorized,
green
ready
pages,
to go,
pink
prepared,
pages, blue pages, whatever it is.
Exactly. I had episodes that had like 14 new drafts without exaggerating. So by the time you're reading 14th, it's completely different than the first. You have to stay flexible, and at the same time, you do have to have that ability to be able to memorize things or to be present in a way that you can, find your way around the script and help the actor you're playing with, even though you're improvising a little bit. You have to find that skill.
That's well said.
So, that's one piece of advice that I can give is, if you find yourself complaining about that, no, use it as a challenge. Use it as a challenge to really walk in the day after, completely memorized or, 90% memorized. And because that is demanded, of you when you are a series regular on the show. So, I had a moment the day after I was sent that scene, the night before, and the day after we shot it at around 5:15 in the morning after having worked for already 8 to 9 hours. And it's like, they're telling you the sun will rise at 5:40 and this is a night scene. You now have 2 takes, you know what I mean? And if you're not there and have those lines memorized and ready to go, you are going to drown. You are. And that is part of the work, so try to develop that skill because it's just as important.
Absolutely. That is a very, very good point. And thank you for pointing that out. So, Filipe, let me jump in on the idea of, creating your own environment. Sometimes there's a lot that you can't control, but there are some things that you can control as an actor. And understanding what your place in the industry is, understanding how the industry sees you, understanding your type, to put it simply, is something that often actors try to, sometimes there's some struggle with, but once you start zoning in on that, it really does help you first of all, say no to things that you know that I can't do this 90%. And then also it helps you perhaps make that audition process a little bit easier. Like when you are given 14 pages and you look at something, at least you can look at it and go, you know what? 80% of this I already understand because this is already 80% of the type of person I am. And maybe there's another 20% that I'll have to explore or mess around with and stretch maybe in order to get what I think we're going for in this particular role. How have you found, in your experience being here and going out on auditions, a way for you to zone in on what your type is and really what your strengths are as an actor so that you can bring those to a role in a much quicker and faster way, and also it gives you a better understanding of the things that you're really right for and the things that you can probably say no to a little bit easier?
All these questions are so huge. I see what you're saying. I hear you and I agree with it, but I am not sure I have been able to really tap into what my type is, whatever that means, and I don't say that out of arrogance. I say that out of genuinely not knowing. I can tell you things about me that I see in most of the characters that I play. And I know that, there are certain things about characters that if they go through life that way, then that will be easy for me to access. I have noticed things like, I think it's important, even if you can't answer a question like, what's your type? I think it's important for you to tap into what is the type of scene or the type of dialogue or the type of, human being that you can really play. And for me, more often than not, those are people who they say what they mean and they mean what they say. I have a really hard time when an audition is sent my way and a character is saying a lot, but it's saying completely, but underneath he means something else. And perhaps that has to do with the way I live. I have a very hard time, which I think you can tell by this interview. I have a really hard time filtering things and being able to say one thing but think another.
But that's an incredibly important thing to understand, first of all, as a human being, but especially as an actor, because then that helps, I think, that helps you as you start to realize those deeper elements about yourself that, okay, this is something that's a little bit more difficult for me. Now, if I want to tackle that, that's fine. But if I shouldn't get frustrated or I shouldn't, bite off more than I can chew, if it's something that I'm not,
exactly,
that I don't experience as a person and I can't bring my full self to as an actor.
Yeah, absolutely. It's important for you to pick up on those things. And once you do, that you have that knowledge that you are good at that one thing and that you need work on the other thing, and I think as much as I have, a lot of my successes have been grounded on what I just told you, regarding the human beings that I enjoy playing. I have gotten better at other things. So then you also have to be sensitive to what your progress is and what it is that you weren't able to do maybe a couple of years ago, but now you are. And I think sometimes some of us get ahead of ourselves or are behind, you feel like you are ready to play all the doctors, but everyone's telling you that you're too young, or you're ready to play all the gangsters, but now everyone's telling you you're too old, and it's sort of whatever that is, it's, I think, my agency does something that I really love. They never sent me the age of the character. So that allows me to not think about, right away, they are helping me not play equality, and I think
a very good point.
Yeah. I mean, I think and listen, sometimes you succeed because you succeed and you have a little bit of luck on your side. But when I arrived at the tape for SNOWFALL, at those 2 tapes, I was in a place where I had been doing so many tapes for a while, that when I arrived at that tape, I was no longer thinking. And that's helpful to, it's helpful that you get to a place where you do something enough that you don't think about it too much and it's easier for you to get out of your own way.
Yes.
And I think, a lot with casting is about that. It's, being able to get out of your own way and imagine that you can actually be, whatever you want to be. I don't want to limit myself that way. You know what I mean? I just think because, I am an immigrant, I'm a proud immigrant, and I'm a Portuguese immigrant, people very often don't know what to do with me, in this business, and that can go one way and it can go another, which is great because then I have a window open to be whatever they want me to be. But at the same time, they can't really see me as anything because I'm not specific enough of one thing. You know what I mean?
Man,
so
that's like the badge I wear.
yeah, exactly. I feel like you
Yep.
and I, yeah, absolutely. And if you think too much about that, then you're going to drive yourself crazy.
Yeah.
So my answer is yes. I mean, it's important to be sensitive to certain parts of your work and knowing what you're good at and what you need some work on. But at the same time, you want to be able to stay flexible enough to explore stranger places and places that will allow you to be maybe a little bit more daring than you thought you could be.
Yeah, very well said. And I think that's always why you see well-established actors, they'll do these indie films or they'll do some strange play or something on the West End or even here in New York City or whatever, and you're like, man, I would have never thought to see this person in this role. And that's exactly why they're doing it. Maybe they've always wanted to express that side or explore that area of their own humanity or dive into that place which might be rather strange and new to them. And, that's okay. And that's why it exists. That's why you see that happen.
Yeah.
That's why you see Bob De Niro doing comedy roles. It's like, it turns out something that he's actually good at. But for the majority of his career, he had this other thing that he was like, was really so innate in him that's what got explored quite a lot. And so now he wants to do what he wants to do.
Yeah, it's just, I wish that we had more opportunities to do that before we become the Robert De Niro's of the world. I think our imaginations in a way have been limited by, a lot of what's going on in this country right now. It's just like we want things to be as pure as they can be so that we can hold on to some sort of truth, because there's so much talk of fake news, and people are lying to us that, we want things to feel as real as they can possibly feel, because, everything else just seems like a clown show these days.
Right. Inauthentic.
Yeah. What can you hold on to?
Well, speaking of something that you can hold on to, what a terrible transition on my part.
Very smooth. Very smooth.
Filipe, are there any books that you would recommend? Maybe it's something that you've been reading when you try to take a little break from the lines in the trailer or something like that. Doesn't even necessarily have to be about acting, but I love asking this question because you never know what somebody might come up with, whether it's poetry or something like that. Anything that you feel like you would love to pass on to another artist?
Absolutely. There are two books that I have learned to hold on to for as long as, just they've really helped me with this career and being able to, like I told you, to get out of my own way and hold on to what is sacred and to what is important, and they are, the first one is called The Inner Game of Tennis. I don't know if you've ever heard of it. Have you ever heard of it?
Yes, I have.
Yeah. I mean, I've been, I had to read it when I was a tennis player because I was a tennis player before I became an actor. My coach made me read it. But at the time, I was too young. I definitely did not understand it. And I've been going back over and over and over again to that book. I think you can translate every paragraph of it. Just, when you read Tennis Player, just read it as an actor and it's everything is translatable, into what we do. It talks about finding the ease in the work. It talks about seeing things non-judgmentally. It talks about finding a balance in your career. It talks about quieting self. It talks about the self one versus self two. Self one, the one that, that is our consciousness, and self two, the subconscious that always attacks the conscious and doesn't allow you to sort of move forward gracefully, whether it is through judgment or self-pity or whatever it is. I think it's very important. I think for such a, it's ironic that we decided to come into this business to find a sense of community and to connect. And so much of the career feels lonely, and
man,
I think
so well said.
Yeah. That's why we're sensitive. That's why, being a tennis player is definitely a lonely, life. You're on your own, traveling all around the world, and you're playing these tournaments by yourself with your team, but, you're on the court by yourself. There's a lot of pressure on you doing well and trying hard and doing your best. And I think that's something that we go through as actors. And sometimes it's important to not try as hard. It's actually when you stop trying so hard that things come to you, and, tennis is such a sport of failure. Even Roger Federer, the best tennis player of all times, has, made 52 mistakes in one game and still won. You know what I mean? So even he is failing the best at it. And the same can be said about what we do. There's not one actor that didn't take a misstep in his life, or in their career, or, it's a really good book. I will talk about it forever.
Yeah.
So The Inner Game of Tennis, persistence, resilience, being able to get back up. And, there's so much in the book that is exactly, translatable.
Hey actors, I've got amazing news. We've hit over 5,000 downloads since launching this podcast in September. That's an amazing feat, and I thank each and every one of you for joining me on this journey and seeking out this great insight from our guests. If you want to show your love for this show and all the amazing info we get from our guests, head to actorceo.com/resources to buy your next book on acting, your next piece of self-tape gear, or your next awesome video series like Acting Shakespeare. You're going to make that purchase anyway, and this way you can show a little support for this podcast you love and all the people that make it happen. Thank you for joining me on this journey, and I cannot wait to keep delivering great guests and outstanding info on how to treat your career like a business throughout the year. Now back to the show.
The other one is called Young Letters to a Poet.
Letters to a Young Poet?
Letters to a Young Poet, yeah.
Yes.
Rilke. I know that's maybe a lot of people say that to you, no?
Yeah, it's been recommended before, but absolutely, it is. It's a great book.
Not too long after I was done shooting Snowfall, I had a terrible audition where it was like my first month in New York again. I felt it was quite terrible. So I left, and I couldn't believe that it was that terrible. I was like, how did I let this happen? I mean, I've learned enough to not let moments like these slip through my fingers. I was just sort of like,
it's so true though. Like, it doesn't matter. And I've had other actors say this on the show too, even at shooting television series or whatever, you get highs and you get lows, man. And it does not matter where you are in your career. Exactly. Those highs and lows will come. It's you're on a sea, so there are waves.
It's a marathon, yeah, and it's absolutely. And I remember, so what I did was I remember loving that book when I was in grad school. So I just ran to the bookstore and I bought it and I read it from front to, the whole book, and it's just so beautiful. I really love that, it's the exercise of sending letters to someone you admire, asking for their advice, and really all they tell you is stop looking outside of yourself. Just, seek within and find what is it about you that you want to bring to this work. Get out of your own way and be about something that is bigger than yourself, and that's something that is very hard to do as an actor because so much of it feels like it's about yourself. So then because so much of it feels self-serving, whether it is, the business of you, social media, here's my pictures of myself looking great and blah, 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 blah. I mean, at the end of the day, I was watching this interview with Mark Rylance, and he's asked about what actor overwhelms you, maybe Judi Dench. And his answer is like, I am overwhelmed by the firemen that I saw on television yesterday, and they were all crying because they couldn't help the people that they wanted to help. Those are the people that overwhelm me. We're just storytellers, we're just agents for those stories to be told. But really, when you think about it, it's important to be a little bit outside of yourself so you can serve something greater than yourself. Because otherwise, you can go through this career and in a blink of an eye, you just start to ask, wait, who am I doing this for? Myself? Just so I can, you know what I mean? I had a little bit of that moment when I looked at myself on a billboard. It's just very bizarre. And, as much as it was a very cool moment, and, I did take the traditional picture of me in a billboard, I also, as I drove away, I also had this feeling of this cannot be what it's about. It just can't, and I got it in that moment. And I mean, this is like a little ant of an experience compared to what some movie stars go through. But, I can only imagine how it gets to you. If you're Al Pacino and everywhere you go, all you see is t-shirts of Scarface and everything. You know what I mean? Scarface is just surrounding you all the time. You develop a sort of self-awareness that is actually harmful for the work because you get, it becomes very self-centered and very self-involved. And, and I think the best actors are able to just sort of, be those agents for something bigger than themselves, And that's definitely the work that I'm interested in. That book always grounds me in that. You know what I mean? It's, because after that audition, I was feeling very sad, but it was all very self-centered. It was like, oh, I did this terrible. You know what I mean? I failed again. How did I let this happen? It was like, it's, it's not that deep, Filipe. It's a TV show. Of course, you want to do well, but at the end of the day, you're not going to, I'm done. I guess what I'm saying is that I'm done seeking perfection. And I'm done seeking external energies to get too much of a say about where my career is headed. You know what I mean? It's important to just be able to stop the noise and seek within. And like Rilke says in the book, I can give you all the advice you want, but at the end of the day, it's going to have to, the kind of work that you want to do and the kind of poetry you want to write will have to come from within.
Mm.
So I can help you all you want, and I can give you advice on how the poem moved me, what I got from it. But at the end of the day, if you yourself don't find it within you a place to drive you through this career that is about something bigger than yourself, then you're going to drive yourself crazy. And I think that's why a lot of us just end up going crazy, because it's just, it's too consuming of a
Right.
life. There's a price that you pay for sure, and this is why I get really upset when people diminish our career. It still blows my mind that actors are sort of seen as less, that you have to become a movie star in order to be taken seriously as an actor.
Right.
That's a sad reality. I definitely do not look at my friends and according to their level of success as far as TV shows go, or fancy theaters go, I definitely don't connect that to who they are artistically, independently. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, I have, some of my most talented friends maybe are not in a place that they wish they were right now. But when I look at them, if they book a great TV show tomorrow, I'm not going to look at them differently. They're still the same artists. They're still doing the same thing. They're just doing it at a bigger, for more people to see it,
Right.
And it's important to be grounded in that, and have something, you can say, a higher purpose, which is to tell stories and provide people with some sort of, saving outside of their crazy lives.
Yeah, absolutely. And that sort of wraps right into a question I always ask, which is, if you could pass on one piece of advice about the business, what would it be? But I feel like, you've really explored that coming through the book and about the poetry and everything. I mean, that's serving something outside of yourself and coming back to that as often as you can will help you survive it in a way that will allow you to have the sustainable career that you want and cultivate this creative expression that you desire.
Exactly.
Without getting drowned in, serving other people's expectations or, getting caught up in this idea of trying to be something.
Asking for permission.
Yes.
I think the industry is built in a way that automatically we end up feeling like we're constantly asking for, just asking. And that is ultimately why I decided to, take it upon myself and start my theater company, because I was not about to let, like the SNOWFALL story that I told you, those 2 months belonged to everyone but me. You know what I mean? Like, everyone had ownership of what was going to happen in my life but me, because the tapes were already sent in. They were, you know what I mean? Like, that's a moment where literally I don't have any control over any of it. But the control that you do have is being able to tell your stories. You have that. That's a possibility. And I definitely, you know what I mean? I just noticed that there wasn't, as much as I love, because of the way I look, I end up going in for a lot of Latino parts, as much as I love to explore those, at the end of the day, I am a Portuguese man, and so are you, no?
Actually, I come from Mexico, actually.
Mexico.
Okay. Where my lineage comes from.
Okay. Moreno is a Portuguese name as well. So
yes.
That's why I asked.
It's certainly a common Hispanic name, that's for sure.
Yeah. So that's, I started to realize that, as far as inclusion goes, there's definitely no Portuguese representation whatsoever. Right. So there's something that we can do here. And there's definitely a lot of playwrights that have not been explored ever in America. So it gives us such a window to play with,
Incredible. Filipe, I can't thank you enough for your time, your generosity of spirit for sure, and just sharing your insight, sharing your incredible journey.
Thank you, brother.
You're a beautiful person, man. I wish you all the success in the world.
I appreciate it, man. I'm very busy right now because we're producing the show, and with SNOWFALL, we're going through press, and
sure,
and I was telling Vanessa, I want to do it. I just feel like I want all of this to be over so that I can actually sit down and slow down and talk to him. And she said, isn't that, because I knew that our conversation wouldn't be like all the interviews that I've been given so far. It would end up being a conversation about things that I care about deeply. So it's I told myself that it is important right now to slow down and be able to just sit down with you. I lit up a candle, got a good glass of wine, and we got to talk about what we love doing.
Yes,
nothing makes me happier.
Man, nothing makes me happier, honestly. That's why I do it.
Yeah. Being European, I really value the art of conversation, It's a big part of our lives and our way of living. We'll stay up all night just at the restaurants, drinking sangria and talking about life until 4 a.m., and that's any chance I get to do that in this really quick country where everything feels so fast, it's a pleasure. So thanks for having me, man.
Of course, man. That fills my heart deeply too.
What you're doing is important. And, the more shows like this we have as actors as well, and people in the industry, the more understanding there will be between us, and that's really important because we, the tendency is to feel lonely out there, but realizing that we're all on the same boat and hopefully, hopefully we're all working towards the same goal, which is telling good stories and providing people with good material.
Mm-hmm. Well, thanks again, man.
Thanks to you, man.
You can find all the resources for this episode in the show notes at actorceo.com/53.
Thanks for listening. Subscribe to the Actor CEO podcast on iTunes and at actorceo.com.